Hi everyone, welcome back to Difference Frames the World, a channel to see the world from a different angle. Today, Clara would like to talk about something that sounds technical but actually sits right at the heart of cross-strait tensions between Beijing, Taipei, and Washington. It is about U.S. arms sales to Taiwan. In the past 10 years, Washington has approved tens of billions of dollars in weapons for Taiwan: fighter jets, missiles, artillery systems, torpedoes, air defense, you name it. On paper, Taiwan is one of America's most heavily supported security partners in Asia. But here's the problem. Signing a contract is one thing. Actually getting the weapons delivered is another. And over the last decade, those two things have drifted very far apart. The big picture. Since around 2015, U.S. arms sales to Taiwan have accelerated, especially after 2019. That fits Washington's broader strategy of strengthening Taiwan's deterrence against the Chinese mainland. But while approvals increased, delivery timelines slipped again and again. By the mid-2020s, Taiwan found itself in a strange position. It had paid for weapons, announced them publicly, built plans around them, but still hadn't received many of the most important systems. That gap is what people now call the arms backlog. As of the mid-2020s, the value of undelivered U.S. arms sold to Taiwan exceeds $20 billion. That's not future wish list items. That's already approved, already contracted equipment that hasn't arrived yet. In simple terms, more than half of Taiwan's major U.S. arms purchases from the past decade are still somewhere in the production pipeline. The F-16 case, symbol of the problem. Nothing illustrates this better than Taiwan's F-16 fighter jet deal. In 2019, Taiwan signed an agreement for 66 brand new F-16V fighters, one of the most advanced versions of the aircraft. It was a political statement as much as a military one. Originally, deliveries were expected to begin around 2023. But year after year, the schedule slipped. By late 2025, jets were rolling off the production line in the U.S., pilots were under training, and photos were released. But the aircraft themselves still hadn't been fully delivered to Taiwan in operational numbers. What was supposed to be a flagship success became a case study in delay. The problem isn't limited to aircraft. It extends to missiles, torpedoes, and precision weapons. Air-launched precision weapons, heavy torpedoes for submarines, and long-range strike systems have all faced similar issues. Some deliveries were pushed back by several years, others were split into partial shipments, and some were quietly rescheduled with new target dates far into the late 2020s. From Taiwan's perspective, that creates a planning nightmare. Just imagine, you train forces based on systems you don't yet have, and you design doctrines around weapons that exist mostly on paper. Why are the weapons delayed, then? There isn't one single reason. It's a pile-up of structural problems. First, U.S. defense industrial capacity is limited. American arms factories are busy. Very busy. They're supplying the U.S. military itself, NATO allies, Ukraine, Middle Eastern partners, and the so-called Indo-Pacific allies all at the same time. Taiwan is competing for production slots in a crowded global queue. Second, long and fragile supply chains slow down the production. Modern weapons rely on components sourced from dozens of suppliers. One missing chip, one delayed engine part, one subcontractor falling behind, and the entire system slows down. Third, the foreign military sales process itself takes time. U.S. arms sales to Taiwan go through a government-to-government system that adds layers of review, testing, certification, and congressional oversight. Even when factories are ready, paperwork and procedures can add months or years. Fourth, ever-changing priorities. When global crises erupt, production priorities shift. Some weapons earmarked for foreign buyers are delayed as factories focus on urgent U.S. or allied needs. And finally, quality control and logistics issues. In a few cases, Taiwan has received equipment that required repairs, replacements, or recertification, adding further delays and frustration. Are all deliveries delayed in reality? No. And this is important. Some systems have arrived on time, or even ahead of schedule. Certain rocket artillery units, training equipment, and smaller weapons packages have moved relatively smoothly. But the systems that matter most strategically, advanced fighters, precision strike weapons, high-end munitions, those are the ones most affected by bottlenecks. Political impact in Taiwan. Inside Taiwan, this backlog has become politically sensitive. Supporters of closer ties with Washington argue that the delays are technical, not political, and that deliveries will come eventually. Critics ask harder questions. If deterrence depends on weapons arriving on time, what happens when they don't? If Taiwan pays billions upfront, how much leverage does it really have afterward? These questions don't have easy answers, but they keep resurfacing in legislative debates and media discussions. Some Taiwanese may even ask whether they have paid for something that they will never get. It is like you have paid the protection fee to the rogues for unpromised security. Maybe when Beijing's troops were already in Taiwan, US weapons would still not arrive as projected. It is like in Canada, a horny guy made a reservation with a service provider, and he had already transferred money to secure the slot. Eventually, the police showed up to protect the service provider from the illegal customer. It is not a perfect metaphor to illustrate the arms sales from Washington to Taipei, as Beijing does not tolerate the US providers anymore. The Chinese mainland has long started to punish the US defense companies for selling weapons to Taiwan. For instance, Beijing sanctioned 20 US defense firms and 10 executives after the US announced the $11 billion worth of arms sales to Taiwan by the end of 2025. From Washington's perspective, arms sales to Taiwan are meant to signal commitment, though ambiguously. It is more of a gesture to show those separatists that they are not yet abandoned. From Taipei's perspective, America's approval of arms sales to the island itself is the signal that really counts, even though it only amounts to an illusion that the US will show up when needed. Indeed, a weapon that exists only in a contract doesn't deter anyone. However, the reality is that the weapons already delivered also make little sense for Taiwan, as they cannot deter the People's Liberation Army either. When facing the J-20 and J-35 stealth fighters, the outdated F-16 fighters, even if the US deliver them to the island, are no better than sparrows confronting eagles. And from Beijing's perspective, the backlog itself sends a mixed message: strong political support on paper, but limited industrial follow-through in reality. Sometimes, the backlog itself is also political. For the US defense firms, if they cannot get rare earth minerals from Beijing, they cannot produce weapons for anyone, not just Taiwan, but all their clients. Although the US says it is expanding production capacity, speeding up processes, and prioritizing Taiwan's most critical systems, the delivery will not be faster, given Donald Trump's alleged friendship with President Xi Jinping. For the Trump administration, it does not matter much whether those weapons are delivered, as nobody really cares. If Beijing takes over Taiwan in 2027 or in 2026, Beijing will get the weapons for free, which is against America's interests. So being late is strategically better and makes more sense. Taiwan, meanwhile, is adjusting its defense planning, emphasizing systems it can produce domestically and strategies that rely less on delayed platforms. Moreover, the island may not need those weapons at all, as the Chinese Liberation Army may not need to attack Taiwan. Encircle the island for 3 weeks, without firing a single bullet, and political forces on the island may seek to reconcile with the mainlanders for a peaceful reunification. A forced peaceful reunification is the right term, as it avoids the destruction of Taiwan and the imposition of international sanctions against Beijing. The core issue remains unresolved, and it need not be resolved. The past 10 years show a clear pattern: approvals are fast, announcements are loud, and deliveries are slow. It might be a deliberate game between Beijing and Washington. The US plays the Taiwan card with Beijing for personal gains, not for the island and its people. It has already made enough money there and emptied the pockets of 23 million taxpayers, so the last thing the US will do is to negotiate with Beijing for a better price to sell the island back to its motherland. It is a little like a kidnapper soliciting the ransom to return the abducted kid to his parents. So the problem now is whether the kidnapper should continue to feed the kid with candies it has promised to keep the poor chap quiet. U.S. arms sales to Taiwan are the candy to soothe Taiwan's separatist elements. For decades, it has been framed as a simple yes or no question, whether the U.S. should continue to play the game. The U.S. government faces a dilemma. To sell or not to sell, it is a question. To ship or not to ship, it is a headache. To continue the game, or to end the game, nobody knows the answer yet.